Hello. Uh, I would like to make a short presentation about a condition that is making news rounds recently. That is the Wuhan Coronavirus. My name is Purna Gunasekara. I'm mostly known as PG. I work for a medical school in the United Kingdom, but I had the privilege of working in Sri Lanka, my country of origin, and in Ghana, where I saw disease manifestation and its management in many forms. This leads me to believe it is good for all of us to have somewhat a rounded, clear understanding of this condition, because it is impacting on different people and different communities in varying degrees of severity. So let's start by talking about this virus that is abbreviated as 290-NCOV or WNCOV. So to start with, I promise this is the only wordy slide here, but let's start by understanding what we already know. We know it's a coronavirus, and here I've used the MESH database to find the definitions. And by the way, everything that is being said during this presentation is personal. I take it is my own understanding of the condition, and yet wherever possible, what I have done is to substantiate the content with the original sources. So the MESH database talks, defines not only coronavirus but its larger family. But what is interesting in this is the font part that is in red. So these group of viruses are known to cause either respiratory or gastrointestinal diseases in a variety of vertebrates, which include humans. Vertebrates meaning people who have a backbone or a spinal canal. Now, they are known to be transmitted by the fecal-oral route or the respiratory route, which basically means it can be transmitted by feces that may then contaminate our food and so on, but also through spread through the respiratory system by coughing, sneezing, and sometimes, in some instances, even by the act of talking. It is also known to be transmitted mechanically, which means that it may be transmitted through animate or inanimate sources, meaning one may sneeze onto a desk and the virus may reside there for a while, and then it may be picked up by some other person. So we know this, we do know, and we also know that this particular coronavirus can be spread from human to human. Now, in this instance, I'm using an article from The Guardian dated 21st January, and it would be interesting to talk about the timeline that led to this. But the third thing that we also know is that this came very recently on the 26th, yesterday, to say that a human may transmit this virus to another person while that original human may be still not showing signs of disease. This we call the incubation period, in that the patient has been exposed to this virus but has not still developed the signs of disease. Now this means that, for instance, if we were doing screening of people for potential exposure, there may be people who do not demonstrate the classic signs of the disease but who may actually be spreading it. So now this is the 26th, and a quick run through the timeline of this particular type of virus that spread. The People's Republic of China decided to inform the World Health Organization that it was facing an unusual pattern of pneumonia presenting in a localized place called Wuhan province on the 31st of December. And what is amazing is that by the 7th of January, they were actually able to isolate the pathogen. And it was a new type of virus. Coronaviruses are not so common. There are about 6 known coronaviruses, so this would be then the 7th. And then the fact that they were able to identify this virus so quickly was extremely helpful, so much so that happened even before the first death reported death from the condition, which came on the 9th of January. The next death was reported on the 16th of January, and that it was starting very slowly, but we know today on the 27th of January, what the BBC says is there have been now 81 deaths so far. But a vast majority of this is still contained within a relatively small localized area. So we know that this is a coronavirus, we know it can spread from human to human, and that a human may transmit it even before showing signs of the illness. So how deadly is this condition? It is causing a lot of fear, and this is an effort to put it into perspective. In this instance, I'm taking this table courtesy of the Business Insider, and they have found the sources from CDC, which is the Centers of Disease Prevention and Control, the World Health Organization, the New England Journal of Medicine, and the Malaysian Journal of Pathology. What this does show is a comparison of the different epidemics that have been linked to viruses recently. Now, these are not by any means all the viruses, but what it does show us is in comparison to the other conditions, the fatality rate, known fatality rate, and this particular table was done on the 24th of January, but at that time it was relatively low. Now, case fatality rate is the number of people who die from the number of people who are diagnosed with the condition. And what we can see here is that in comparison to conditions like Ebola, the case fatality rate of the Wuhan coronavirus is relatively little. But again, I draw attention to the fact that this table was published on the 24th of January. Today, by the 27th, the death rate has gone up to 81. The number of cases has gone up much higher too. Though the exact figures that are in this table may vary from publication to publication, the relative distribution of this should be more or less accurate. So from this, we get an idea that this particular virus does not carry the same high case fatality rate as others. Now put this in perspective. So let's consider the last row with Wuhan being 81 today. If we were to look at it, compare its virulence or how deadly it is with the influenza virus, this particular chart, the bar chart on the left of the screen, compares it with the last epidemic that was caused by the influenza virus, and the last epidemic happening in 2009 by an H1N1 strain, and the particular type, the subtype, was known as the swine flu virus, or also called the PDM09. Now this is interesting because it was also an H1N1 strain that also caused the Spanish flu 90 years before in 1918, and in that instance, estimates suggest that up to 50 million people had died. Now, when it came to this particular epidemic, it was a pandemic. It was the World Health Organization actually defined it as a pandemic, which means it spreads. It involves many countries. It's worldwide. The estimated fatality rate ranges from about 150,000 to 590,000. So imagine a similar H1N1 strain killed 50 million people in 1918, and then 90 years later, it is estimated to have caused up to 590,000 deaths. That's about 1% of that previous pandemic. Now, what is also interesting is we are having two bars here. In blue is this normal seasonal flu that is caused also by influenza virus. So this seasonal flu happens all the time, and what is interesting there is the World Health Organization estimates, even as recently as 2017, that between 290 to 650,000 deaths occur every year due to respiratory illness caused by seasonal influenza virus. There are two subtypes that cause disease in humans, A and B, and it causes up to 600, it is estimated to cause up to 650,000 deaths. Now put that in perspective with what is happening now. It is interesting that even at this stage, seasonal flu virus is claiming lives and it is causing illness. So I thought I'll compare these two just in order for us to get an understanding, a perspective of the relative magnitude of mortality, of deaths caused by Wuhan in comparison to what we commonly refer as seasonal flu. Now, how does this present? So it presents with really general symptoms. We use the word symptoms to describe what a person who's infected with the condition feels. So they may feel tired, there is difficulty in breathing, that may progress to difficulty in breathing, a cough that is often described initially as a dry cough, and a high temperature. Now these are pretty general symptoms or signs, pretty general symptoms that we would attribute to many normal conditions. But this can then progress in susceptible individuals to real illness. And what we need to understand here too is that when we take the fatalities associated with the coronavirus outbreak this time, it is mostly among the elderly population who may be also suffering from other illnesses. So it is one thing to get infected with a condition. We may suffer it at different degrees of severity. It may lead all the way to death, but this does not happen in each and every case. So why are we so scared about this? Well, first of all, obviously it's a new virus. We have no known treatment, so we know very little about it, and that is a cause of concern. It is known to cause death, and obviously that should be especially in susceptible individuals. It is of course a condition, and it is spreading. It is spreading from the country of origin. We believe it started in a seafood market in Wuhan province, and now it has spread to many countries. Yes, but perhaps so by virtue of spreading, it is going to infect more and more people, and the fact that this spread of disease can happen at a time when a person has still not displayed the full signs and symptoms of the disease means it is going to spread faster. But perhaps the biggest fear we have is that it may mutate. Now mutation is a natural process. This virus has already mutated in that when it initially started, we believe it came from an animal to a human, and now it's mutated to be able to be transmitted from a human to human. So what this mutation is actually an evolutionary process that almost helps us choose the most appropriate strain that can survive a series of generations. So it can obviously mutate into a more virulent form of the virus, or to a less virulent form than what we see now. Now there is no way of predicting which way this may go, but there is a general rule of thumb that has held true to most diseases. That is that the mutation being an evolutionary tool to find the most sustainable strain generally means that the less virulent types tend to survive more. There is a simple reason for this. Viri, like coronavirus and anything else, can indeed sometimes survive outside a host, a living cell, but it cannot replicate. So because it cannot replicate without a host, a living host cell, it makes no sense killing that host. So imagine this mutates into a far more virulent form. It will cause massive, severe illness in a patient, but the virus may die with that patient because the patient may not live to pass it on. compare that to a less virulent form of mutation, it means that it will find more living hosts in order to spread and replicate. So there is a general rule of thumb that when a virus mutates into a long-lasting form, it is a less virulent type that may actually predominate over any period of time. So this is just a rule of thumb. It is that we have no way of predicting it. But I think it is important because this fear of mutation is actually causing a lot of concern among many people. So what can we as an individual do to prevent it? And this is the beauty. So we are faced with a condition that we do not know. We are faced with a virus for which we have no treatment, but we can certainly do a lot, an awful lot, to prevent, first of all, prevent ourselves from getting exposed to it, and then prevent us from transmitting it to another person. So again, this is from the Centers of Development, Centers of Disease Prevention and Control, and what they say is very clearly to wash our hands for at least 20 seconds. And if soap and water is not available, we may use alcohol-based hand sanitizer. So soap and water for 20 seconds of running water is pretty good. And that 20 seconds is important. It's not just immersing our hands in water, but an easy way to remember is simply to count the 20 seconds, saying, 1001, 1002, 1003, generally up to 20 will take us to 20 seconds. And then, if our hands are unwashed, we are requested to avoid touching eyes, nose, mouth, etc. Here, because those organs are not protected by the dense skin that covers the rest of our body. So things like the eyes, nose and mouth means if the virus is being spread by the mechanical transmission route, it may be able to gain entry to our body. We are told to avoid contact with people who are sick and to stay home when we are sick. And that is important, but this actually is these are general steps that we could take, but do remember, in the case of this particular coronavirus, we may have individuals who are spreading it who themselves have not yet developed the signs of sickness. We are asked to cover or cough or sneeze with a tissue and then bin it. If not, at least sneeze into the, we can literally cover our face with our elbow and sneeze in there and ensure that we then wash our garments as quickly as possible in case we do not have a hanky nearby. And we are also asked to clean and disinfect frequently touched objects and surfaces. Now these are very, very general tips on hygiene that would not only help control the spread of this coronavirus, but many, many other pathogens. So it just shows, despite this huge fear, this rate of spread, these few steps can actually make a difference between it spreading any further or us containing it. So how can we do this? By ourselves taking part in this, by making it our own crusade, how can we actually prevent the spread of such a major illness? Now I'm borrowing this illustration, which is commonly used to demonstrate the concept of herd immunity in relation to vaccines. What it shows is, what it basically means is that within a given population, if a certain number of individuals are resistant to that infection, they will then form a barrier for that infection spreading to a third party. Now, what we have on the left is an illustration of a person who's infected in red, and then we have people who are susceptible in gray compared to those who are not susceptible, in this case vaccinated and therefore resistant, in green. Now, if we do not have a sufficient number of people, a percentage of people who are resistant, it is going to spread from one to another. Whereas, if increasing numbers of people are resistant, they will literally form a wall around the person who's already carrying the disease to prevent it going further. Now, we are dealing here with a condition that has no vaccine. So this, in that sense, does not hold true. But the principle of herd immunity, I would argue, still works if we take precautions ourselves. So to me, a vaccination, getting vaccinated is something like putting a bulletproof vest and walking into a war zone. I'm not here to talk about the merits and demerits of the vaccination debate, but it may confer some kind of protection from what is going on. Whereas in this instance, because what we are saying is because we do not have this bulletproof vest, and also because we can take effective steps ourselves, let's take steps that will prevent us getting exposed to those stray bullets. And third, those steps are these simple steps that we outlined earlier. If we were to do this, we ourselves will become those individuals that are marked in green in that the right side of the presentation, or sorry, the left side of the graph, and that shows that we may actually form a barrier to prevent further spread. And this is something we can actually take ownership for and do it ourselves. So in the bigger scheme of things, I think what this virus will do, should hopefully do, is to make us reflect on our own approach towards health and well-being. The World Health Organization, as early as 1948, in fact, defined health as not merely a state of absence of disease, but a balanced state of well-being. And that means we have to start looking at ourselves, and we have to look at what will make us thrive, not merely survive by avoiding harmful things, but actually thrive, not only as individuals and as communities. And as we can see here, we all carry a genetic blueprint that we inherit, and that is in blue, and the outer circle, in brown, is the physical and social environment we live in. And it is sandwiched between these two is we find ourselves and our ability to modify our behavior. And if we were to understand the conditions like what we are trying to do here, if we were to modify our behavior in such a way that we not only avoid the risk of exposure, but actually strive in developing not only our individual resilience, but our communal understanding against everything, it will be not only coronavirus that we'll be able to tackle, but many other things that are impacting on us as a community, as a society. Waiting for the governments and policymakers to make decisions that will impact on us takes time. And for instance, in this case, there's already been a decision to stop the kind of markets where living and dead animal products are sold side by side, which can lead to this kind of transmission of virus from animal sources to humans. So that kind of thing can happen, but it is far better if we understand these risks ourselves and take steps to avoid it. And that means not only are we less reliant on central interventions, but we are given a chance to celebrate our individuality. It's not just protecting ourselves from risks, but actually finding our innate competencies and celebrating them so that we can actually thrive. So I hope this gives an idea. So in summary, we are dealing with a coronavirus that is spreading from human to human, and that can be spread at a time when humans have still not developed the signs of the disease. We know that it can be, we can take very basic precautions to protect ourselves from being exposed to it, and if we do so, we can actually prevent this. We also know this coronavirus has relatively a lesser case fatality rate compared to other epidemics that have taken place. The Global Health Organization has still not defined this as a pandemic as of now. It may do so, but we certainly can make a big difference, not only to the control of this condition, but longer term to the happiness and the well-being of humanity. Now, you may have noticed this logo called MegaReach in the previous slides too. This presentation is being made on behalf of MegaReach. It's an organization that celebrates the individuality of every person. We believe every person has some innate value, and we try to create opportunities for individuals all around the world to celebrate it. So if you have good stories to share, if there are things we can learn from you, or if you would like to consider collaborating with us, there is an email there. Please feel free to contact us. Overall, I hope this will help inform us about the nature of the virus that we are faced with, and also inform us of steps that we can do as individuals that can actually make a significant impact. Thank you.